The great hall of the eternal conclave stretched for miles in every direction. Crystal pillars rose from the polished floor like frozen flames, each one carved by master artisans over thousands of years. Light from the twin suns of Prime poured through the transparent ceiling and scattered into a million rainbow fragments. It was the most beautiful room in the known galaxy, and every member of the Dominion knew it. 847 representatives sat in their floating chairs, arranged in perfect circles around the central platform. Their pale blue skin glowed softly in the sunlight. Their 4 eyes blinked in slow, peaceful rhythm. They had ruled this section of the galaxy for 10,000 cycles, and they had never known defeat. High Arbiter stood on the central platform and waited for silence. He was old, even by standards. His skin had faded to a light gray, and his movements were slow and careful. But his mind was sharp, and his voice still carried the weight of absolute authority. "My fellow members of the conclave," he began, "I bring you news of a new world, a world ripe for harvest." The holographic display behind him flickered to life. A small blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly in the empty space above his head. It was pretty in a simple way. Lots of water, white clouds, large patches of green and brown land. "This world orbits a yellow star in the outer region of Spiral Arm 7, continued. "The natives call it Earth. They call themselves humans." A soft murmur passed through the conclave. New worlds were always exciting. New resources, new labor, new additions to the ever-growing dominion. "Show us the natives," called out a representative from the third circle. Nodded and changed the display. Now the hologram showed the humans themselves. They were strange creatures, only 2 eyes, soft skin in various shades of brown and pink, no claws, no natural armor. They stood on 2 legs and used their upper limbs for manipulation. "They are weak," observed representative from the first circle. She was young and ambitious, always eager to prove herself. "Look at them. No natural weapons, thin skin. They would break easily." "Indeed," agreed. "Our scouts have studied them for several of their years. They are a young species. They have only recently discovered how to split the atom. Their space travel is primitive. Chemical rockets, fragile metal containers. They have not even colonized their own moon in any permanent way." Laughter rippled through the hall. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. The difference in development was almost embarrassing. "But there is something else," said, and his voice grew more serious. "Something we must consider." The display changed again. Now it showed maps of Earth covered in lines and colors, different nations, different borders, different flags. "They are divided," explained. "They fight among themselves constantly. Their history is nothing but war after war after war. They kill each other over land, over resources, over ideas, over things they cannot even see or touch. They have built weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and they have pointed these weapons at each other." The conclave members shifted in their seats. This was unusual. Most species they encountered were peaceful, unified, easy to control. A species that fought itself so violently was strange. "Is this not a concern?" asked representative from the fifth circle. He was a cautious one, always asking questions, always looking for problems. "If they are so violent, might they not be dangerous?" Smiled. It was the patient smile of a teacher explaining something simple to a confused student. "Consider what you are saying, representative. They are violent, yes, but they are violent toward each other. They waste their energy fighting themselves. They have no unity, no common purpose. When our ships appear in their sky, they will be too busy arguing among themselves to mount any real defense." He gestured at the display, which now showed human military forces. Tanks, planes, ships, soldiers carrying simple projectile weapons. "Look at their technology. Metal bullets, chemical explosives. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear devices, which they are too afraid to use. Our shields can absorb their strongest attacks without any damage. Our smallest patrol craft could destroy their largest city in minutes." The conclave members nodded. The numbers were clear. The armada consisted of 12,000 warships, each one carrying weapons that humans could not even imagine. The conquest would be quick and easy. "Furthermore," continued, "Earth is rich in resources, fresh water, fertile land, useful minerals, and the humans themselves are strong and numerous. They will make excellent workers once they are properly controlled." Representative raised her hand. "I move that we vote on the matter. I see no reason to delay." Nodded. "Very well. The question before the conclave is simple. Shall the Dominion add the planet Earth to our territory? Shall we bring the humans under our wise and benevolent rule?" The voting began. One by one, each representative pressed the symbol on their chair that indicated their choice. Green for yes, red for no. The count appeared on the great display for all to see. The numbers climbed steadily. 100, 200, 300, all green. Not a single red vote appeared. Watched with satisfaction. This was how it should be. Unity, agreement, the smooth operation of a perfect system. The count reached 800, then 840, then the final votes came in. 847 in favor, 0 against. The decision was unanimous. "It is done," announced. "The conclave has spoken with one voice. Earth will be ours." Applause filled the Crystal Hall. Representatives congratulated each other on the wise decision. Already, they were discussing how to divide the new resources, how to organize the new labor force, how to integrate Earth into the Dominion's vast economy. None of them felt any doubt. None of them felt any fear. They had done this 100 times before with 100 other worlds. The pattern was always the same: arrive in force, demonstrate power, accept surrender, begin harvest. None of them understood what they had just done. None of them knew that somewhere across the galaxy, on a small blue planet, the humans were about to receive visitors. And the humans had spent their entire existence preparing for exactly this moment. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They had invented new ways to kill with every generation. They had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have destroyed them. They had built weapons capable of ending all life on their planet, and they had somehow managed not to use them. They were, without knowing it, the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced. And they had just voted unanimously to make them angry. The crystal halls of Prime sparkled in the light of the twin suns. The conclave members returned to their comfortable lives, confident in their power, secure in their superiority. They had no idea that they had just signed the death warrant of their entire civilization. The armada arrived on a Tuesday morning. 12,000 warships dropped out of fold space in perfect formation, filling the sky above Earth like a second moon. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering: smooth curves, glowing engines, weapons that could level mountains with a single shot. They hung in the darkness of space, beautiful and terrible, waiting. High Commander stood on the bridge of the flagship and looked down at the blue planet below. She was tall, even for a. Her pale skin was decorated with the marks of 100 conquests. She had done this many times before. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies, let them hear our voice." Her communications officer obeyed. Within seconds, every radio, every television, every phone on Earth was receiving the same message. "People of Earth," began, her voice calm and cold, "I am High Commander of the Dominion. Your planet now belongs to us. You will surrender your governments, your militaries, and your resources. You will accept our rule. Resistance is pointless. You have 6 hours to comply." She ended the transmission and turned to her second-in-command. "Prepare the landing parties. I want troops on the ground before sunset." "Yes, Commander. Should we target their military installations first?" Shook her head. There is no need, look at them. She pointed at the tactical display which showed the chaos unfolding on Earth below. They are already fighting among themselves. Their leaders are arguing. Their people are panicking. They will collapse before we even land. She was right about the panic. Across the planet, people were running through the streets, screaming, crying, praying. Governments were holding emergency meetings. News networks were broadcasting nonstop. It was chaos, just as they had expected. But was wrong about one thing. The humans were not collapsing. They were organizing. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, the President of the United States sat at a long table with a phone in each hand. On one phone was the leader of Russia. On the other was the leader of China. They were enemies. They had been enemies for generations. They had enough nuclear weapons pointed at each other to destroy the world 10 times over. Now they were making a deal. "We share everything," the President said. "All intelligence, all technology, all resources, no secrets." "Agreed," said the Russian. "Agreed," said the Chinese. Similar conversations were happening all over the world. Old hatreds were set aside. Ancient grudges were forgotten. It happened so fast that they never even noticed. Within 12 hours, Earth had a unified military command for the first time in human history. Within 24 hours, every nuclear weapon on the planet was under a single control system. Within 48 hours, secret military projects that had been hidden for decades were brought into the light. They did not know about the underground bases. They did not know about the experimental aircraft. They did not know about the weapons that human governments had been building in secret, preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. The first landing parties touched down in the empty fields outside major cities. 1,000 soldiers, armed with energy weapons and protected by personal shields, marched toward the nearest population centers. They found nothing. The cities were empty. The streets were silent. Doors hung open. Cars were abandoned. It was as if every human had simply vanished. "Where are they?" asked a young soldier, his 4 eyes scanning the empty buildings. His commander checked the scanner. "I detect life signs underground. They are hiding, cowards." The commander smiled. This was going to be even easier than expected. They would simply wait for the humans to come out, or they would dig them up like animals from burrows. Then the sun went down. The attack came from everywhere at once. Humans poured out of buildings, out of tunnels, out of holes in the ground. They came with guns, with knives, with bombs strapped to their bodies. They did not form neat lines. They did not announce themselves. They simply appeared and started killing. The shields could stop energy weapons. They could stop most physical projectiles, but they could not stop everything. Humans found the weak points. They aimed for the joints in the armor. They threw acid at the shield generators. They drove vehicles loaded with explosives directly into formations. A soldier would kill 10 humans, 20 humans, and then the 21st would get through. One knife in the right place. One bullet through a cracked shield. One bomb detonating at just the right moment. And the humans kept coming. The first commander to fall was killed by a 12-year-old girl who walked up to him with a smile and a backpack full of explosives. She said something to him before she pressed the button. The translator in his helmet told him what she said. "This is for my dad." By morning, half the landing force was dead. High Commander received the reports on her bridge and could not believe what she was reading. This was not possible. Primitive species did not fight like this. They surrendered. They begged. They did not sacrifice themselves by the thousands just to kill a few invaders. "They are insane," her second-in-command whispered. "They do not care if they die." "Send more troops," ordered, "and begin orbital bombardment of their military installations." The bombardment began. Great beams of energy fell from the sky, destroying bases, leveling cities, killing millions. They expected this to break human resistance. Instead, it made things worse. Before the bombardment, some humans had still hoped for peace. Some had talked about negotiation, surrender, finding a way to coexist. The orbital strikes ended those conversations forever. Now every human on Earth had the same goal: kill the invaders, all of them, no matter the cost. Factories that had been making cars started making weapons. Scientists who had been researching medicine started researching ways to kill. Old soldiers who had retired decades ago picked up their guns again. Children learned to fight. Grandparents learned to make bombs. The whole planet became a weapon. And then something happened that changed everything. A group of human soldiers, fighting in the ruins of what had once been a great European city, managed to capture a shuttle. It was damaged, barely functional, but it was intact. They dragged it underground before they could destroy it. Within a week, human scientists had taken it apart. Within a month, they understood how it worked. Within 6 months, they had built their own version, crude but functional. High Commander received this report and felt something she had never felt before in her long career of conquest. Fear. The humans were not just fighting, they were learning, they were adapting, they were taking technology and making it their own. She looked down at the blue planet, still burning in dozens of places from the orbital bombardment, and realized that she had made a terrible mistake. They had come to Earth expecting to find prey. They had found something else entirely. They had rules for war. They had followed these rules for 10,000 years across 100 conquered worlds. War was supposed to be clean, efficient, controlled. You destroyed military targets. You captured civilians. You preserved infrastructure. You won and then you harvested. The humans had no such rules. High Commander learned this lesson in South America. The forces had captured a large city there, one of the few places where humans had not completely evacuated. Thousands of civilians remained, and they established a garrison, expecting to use these humans as workers and hostages. For 3 days, everything seemed normal. The humans were quiet, obedient. They did what they were told. On the 4th day, the soldiers started dying. At first, it seemed like a disease. Soldiers would collapse without warning, blood pouring from their mouths and eyes. Medical officers scanned them but found nothing. Then more soldiers fell, and more. It took 2 days to discover the truth. The humans had poisoned the water supply. Not just the water going to but all the water. The entire city's water system had been contaminated with a chemical that was harmless to humans but deadly too. The civilians who had remained behind knew what was in the water. They drank it anyway. They died alongside their captors, smiling as they watched the invaders fall. The garrison commander sent a desperate message to the fleet. They killed themselves to kill us. They poisoned their own children. What kind of species does this? Had no answer. The same pattern repeated across the planet. In Asia, they conquered a region only to find that the humans had vanished into tunnel networks that stretched for hundreds of miles underground. Every time they tried to follow, they walked into traps, explosives, poison gas, pits filled with sharp metal. The tunnels were death mazes, and the humans knew every twist and turn. In Europe, the resistance fought from the ruins of bombed cities. They used the rubble as cover, the destroyed buildings as fortresses. They attacked at night when their dark clothes and knowledge of the terrain gave them advantages. They never fought fair. They never stood in the open. They struck from shadows and vanished before they could respond. And everywhere, the humans used tactics that horrified them. They used their own people as bait. Old men and women would approach patrols, pretending to surrender, and then detonate explosives hidden under their clothes. Children would offer food to tired soldiers, food that was laced with slow-acting poison. The wounded would lie in the streets, calling for help, and when medics came to assist, hidden fighters would open fire. "There is no honor in this," complained an officer. "They use their weak ones as weapons. They sacrifice their young. They have no shame." But it worked. The occupation force, which had started at 2 million soldiers, was down to half that number within 6 months. They controlled pieces of land, yes, but they controlled nothing else. Every road was dangerous. Every building might contain enemies. Every glass of water might be poison. And while they struggled to hold their ground on Earth, the humans were working on something much bigger. Deep underground, in bunkers scattered across the planet, human scientists and engineers were studying every piece of technology they could capture. They worked around the clock, sleeping in shifts, living on coffee and determination. Many of them had lost family in the bombardments. All of them wanted revenge. The fold drive was the key. They used it to travel between stars, crossing distances that would take human ships thousands of years. If humans could understand it, copy it, improve it, they could take the war to the enemy. A young physicist named led the research team. She had lost her husband and daughter in the first orbital strikes. She had not slept more than 4 hours at a time since the invasion began. Her eyes were red, her hands shook, but her mind was clear. The basic principle is simple, she explained to her team. They fold space. They create a shortcut between 2 points. The math is actually beautiful. Can we copy it? Asked her assistant. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. We can do better than copy it, look here. She pointed at the alien equations on her screen. They have been using the same design for thousands of years. They never improved it. They never had to. No one ever challenged them. She pulled up a new set of equations, human-made. We can make it faster, more efficient. We can build ships that will run circles around them. Within a year, the first human starship was ready. It was ugly. It was crude. It was held together by welding and hope, but it worked. The ship was called the Retribution, and it carried a crew of volunteers who knew they would probably not survive. They did not care. They had all lost someone. They all wanted the same thing. The Retribution jumped to fold space and disappeared from Earth orbit. It reappeared 3 hours later in the skies above Colony 7, a peaceful agricultural world that had never known war. The colonists looked up and saw a strange vessel, unlike anything in their records. It broadcast a message in perfect, transmitted on all frequencies. You voted to invade our world. You killed our families. You burned our cities. Now we bring the war to you. The Retribution did not have powerful weapons. It did not need them. It simply crashed itself into the colony's main power plant at full speed. The explosion killed 10,000 and left the colony without power for 6 months. The crew of the Retribution died instantly. They had known they would. They had volunteered anyway. When news of the attack reached Prime, the Eternal Conclave gathered in emergency session. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were afraid. This is impossible, said Representative, the same one who had called humans weak so many months ago. How did they build a fold drive so quickly? How did they find our colony? High Arbiter sat in silence, staring at the reports. The humans had done in 1 year what most species could not do in a century. They had stolen technology and improved it. They had built warships from nothing. They had struck at the heart of the Dominion. We have awakened something, he said quietly, something we do not understand. More reports came in over the following weeks. Human ships were appearing throughout space. Not many, a dozen, perhaps 2 dozen, but enough to spread panic. They attacked supply lines. They destroyed communication stations. They vanished before warships could respond. And back on Earth, the factories were building more ships every day. The humans were not just defending their planet anymore. They were preparing to attack. They were preparing for total war. And total war, as they were beginning to learn, was something humans understood better than any species in the galaxy. The Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 300 star systems. They had never lost a war, never retreated from a conquest, never known the taste of defeat. That changed in the 3rd year, after the invasion of Earth. The human fleet had grown from a handful of crude vessels to over 500 warships. They were still ugly by standards, still rough and unpolished, but they were fast, deadly, and crewed by soldiers who feared nothing. Admiral James commanded the first human expeditionary force from the bridge of the battleship Vengeance. He was 62 years old, a veteran of 3 Earth wars, and he had watched his entire family die in the orbital bombardment of Chicago. He did not smile anymore. He did not joke. He lived for one purpose only. "Status report," he said, his voice calm and flat. "All ships in position, Admiral. The fleet defending Colony 12 numbers approximately 200 vessels. We have the advantage in numbers." Nodded, "Begin the attack." The battle lasted 4 hours. They fought bravely as they always did, but they were not prepared for human tactics. Human ships did not form neat lines. They swarmed like insects, attacking from all directions at once. They rammed damaged enemy vessels instead of retreating. They targeted engines and life support rather than weapons, trapping crews in crippled ships. When it was over, Colony 12 belonged to humanity. 170 ships were destroyed. The human losses were significant, nearly 80 vessels, but the factories back on Earth were building more every day. Admiral walked through the captured colony's main city, stepping over the bodies of soldiers. The civilians had been evacuated before the battle, transported to other worlds. He was grateful for that. He did not want to kill civilians. He just wanted to end this war. His communications officer approached with a tablet. "Admiral, we've intercepted a transmission from Prime. The High Arbiter is requesting negotiations." Took the tablet and read the message. They were offering to withdraw from Earth completely. They would return all human prisoners. They would pay reparations. They would sign a treaty promising never to attack human space again. 3 years ago, such an offer would have seemed like a miracle. Now felt nothing. "Send a reply," he said. "Tell them we do not negotiate." "Sir, they are offering everything we asked for." Turned to face his officer. His eyes were empty, cold, like windows into a dark room. "They voted to destroy us, all of them, unanimous. They did not offer us negotiations. They did not offer us peace. They offered us slavery or death." He looked back at the burning city. "Now we offer them the same." The human advance continued. Colony after colony fell. The military, designed for quick conquests against weak enemies, could not adapt to a long war against a determined foe. Their supply lines were too long. Their soldiers were not prepared for an enemy that never surrendered, never stopped, never showed mercy. High Arbiter sent delegation after delegation to negotiate peace. Each one was received politely by human commanders. Each one was questioned extensively about military positions, political structures, and economic systems. Each one was then executed, and their bodies returned to Prime in sealed containers. "They are not warriors," said in a speech to the conclave. "They are something else, something worse. They do not want to defeat us. They want to erase us from existence." Some members of the conclave called for a full mobilization, for throwing every resource into the war. Others called for unconditional surrender, hoping that giving up completely might satisfy the human thirst for revenge. Neither approach mattered. The humans were not interested in what they wanted. The inner worlds began to fall. These were the old colonies, established thousands of years ago, the heart of civilization. Beautiful worlds with ancient cities and proud histories. One by one, they went dark. Refugees fled toward Prime, the one place they believed would be safe. They came in overcrowded ships, carrying stories of human soldiers who seemed immune to pain, who laughed while fighting, who kept attacking even after receiving wounds that would kill any other species. "They do not sleep," whispered one refugee, a soldier who had survived 3 battles. "We captured one once. We held him for 2 days. He did not eat. He did not rest. He just watched us. waiting. When we finally relaxed our guard, he killed 6 of us with his bare hands before we stopped him." "They are not people," said another. "They are weapons. Their whole species is a weapon, designed by some cruel god to destroy everything in their path." The stories grew with each telling, becoming legends, becoming nightmares. Human soldiers became monsters in imagination, unstoppable, unfeeling, endless. The truth was simpler and sadder. The humans were just people, ordinary people who had lost their homes, their families, their future. They fought so hard because they had nothing left to lose. They showed no mercy because they had been shown none. In the 5th year of the war, the human fleet reached the outer edge of the system. 2,000 warships, carrying over 3 million soldiers, ready for the final battle. Admiral, now an old man with white hair and tired eyes, stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the enemy on his display. Prime, the crystal towers, the beautiful seas, the heart of the empire that had tried to enslave his people. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the planet. The High Arbiter is begging for mercy. He says they will do anything, give us anything. He is willing to surrender himself personally if we will spare the civilian population." Was silent for a long moment. He thought about Chicago, about the fire falling from the sky, about his wife and children screaming as their home collapsed around them. He thought about the millions of humans who had died in the invasion. He thought about all the soldiers who had sacrificed themselves to bring him to this moment. "Tell him no," said finally. "Tell him what I told every other who asked for mercy. They voted, all of them, unanimous. Now they will live with the consequences." He turned to his tactical officer. "Begin the assault." The final battle for Prime had begun. Prime burned for 11 days. The crystal spires that had stood for 100,000 years shattered like glass under human bombardment. The great libraries, containing knowledge from across the galaxy, collapsed into piles of rubble. The beautiful seas turned red with blood and fire. Admiral watched from orbit as his forces swept across the planet. He felt nothing. He had expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even joy when this moment came. Instead, there was only emptiness. A job being finished, a promise being kept. The military fought to the last soldier. They knew there would be no surrender, no mercy, no tomorrow. They threw themselves at the human lines in desperate charges, dying by the thousands. It did not matter. The humans kept coming, advancing block by block, building by building, until there was nothing left to defend. The civilian population had mostly evacuated in the weeks before the invasion. But millions remained, too old or too sick or too stubborn to leave. They huddled in shelters underground, listening to the thunder above them, waiting for the end. High Arbiter was found in the deepest bunker beneath the capital city. He was surrounded by the surviving members of the Eternal Conclave, 53 representatives out of the original 847. Most had died in the war or taken their own lives. These were the ones who remained, waiting for judgment. General Sarah led the squad that found them. She was 45 years old, small and thin, with gray hair and cold eyes. Her mother had been the physicist who had unlocked the secrets of the fold drive. Her father had died in the first wave of the invasion. She had been fighting for 5 years and she was very tired. The representatives cowered as the human soldiers entered the bunker. Some wept. Some prayed to gods that had not answered them. High Arbiter stood alone, trying to maintain some dignity in his final moments. "I wish to speak to your commander," he said. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled. General stepped forward. "I am the commander." Studied her with his 4 eyes. She was so small, this creature who had destroyed his empire, so fragile-looking. He could not understand how such beings had defeated the mightiest civilization in the galaxy. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracked on the word. "We offered you everything, peace, territory, reparations. We would have given you anything. Why did you refuse?" Was silent for a moment. She thought about her mother working herself to death in underground laboratories. She thought about her father burning in the fire from the sky. She thought about all the people she had lost, all the friends who had died fighting this war. "You voted," she said quietly. "Every single one of you, unanimous, 847 to 0. You looked at our world, our children, our future, and you decided we were prey. Not one of you objected. Not one of you showed mercy. Not one of you said, perhaps we should leave them alone." She stepped closer to the old, her eyes never leaving his face. "We learned something from your invasion, Arbiter. We learned that we are not alone in the universe, and that the universe is full of predators who see kindness as weakness. You taught us that. You showed us that the galaxy does not reward mercy. It rewards strength. It rewards the willingness to do whatever is necessary to survive." His legs gave out. He sank to his knees, his ancient body too weak to hold him up anymore. "We were wrong," he whispered. "We did not understand what you were. Please, my people have suffered enough. The children did not vote. The ones who fled did not vote. Why must they pay for our mistake?" Looked at him for a long moment. Something flickered in her cold eyes, perhaps pity, perhaps just exhaustion. "They will not pay," she said. "We are not like you. We do not destroy civilizations for resources or convenience. Your people will survive. Your colonies will be allowed to govern themselves. Your culture will be preserved." Hope sparked in his eyes. "Then you will show mercy." "No," said. "We will show justice. The members of the conclave who voted for the invasion will be tried for crimes against humanity. Those found guilty will be executed. The rest of your people will live, but they will live under our protection. They will watch their empire become part of ours, and they will tell everyone they meet what happens when you vote to invade Earth." She turned to her soldiers. "Take them, all of them, process them for transport." As the representatives were led away in chains, looked back at General. "Will you remember us?" he asked. "When all this is over, when centuries have passed, will your people remember the—" Nodded slowly. "We will preserve your capital city. The crystal halls of the conclave will stand forever as a monument. Every human child will learn about the vote, about the invasion, about what happened next. We will remember you." She paused. "We will remember what you taught us about the universe, and we will never forget the lesson." The trials lasted 3 years. 792 members of the original conclave were found guilty and executed. The rest had died before they could face judgment. The last to die was High Arbiter, who used his final words to apologize to the people of Earth. "We thought you were weak," he said. "We were wrong. You were simply sleeping, and we were foolish enough to wake you." The galaxy watched in silence as humanity took its place among the stars. Other species had heard the stories of the war, had seen what humans were capable of when threatened. They were curious about these newcomers, and they were afraid. But the humans did not continue their conquest. They settled their new territories, rebuilt there, and extended hands of friendship to their neighbors. They traded fairly, kept their promises, and protected the weak. They laughed, they loved, they created beautiful things. Yet no one forgot what they had done to the. No one forgot the crystal towers of Prime, preserved as a monument to the folly of underestimating humanity. No one forgot the lesson written in the ruins. 300 years after the war, a young historian traveled to the human to study the species that had destroyed and then saved his people. He walked the streets of rebuilt cities, spoke with human scholars, learned their history. On his last day on Earth, he visited a museum dedicated to the war. There, in a hall of memories, he found a recording of the original vote. 847 green lights, blinking one after another. Unanimous. A human woman, very old, sat next to him on the viewing bench. She noticed his interest in the recording. "My great-grandmother was there," she said. "On the day the ships came. She was 7 years old. She watched her parents die in the bombardment. She spent the next 5 years fighting in the resistance. The young did not know what to say. "I am sorry," he managed, "for what my ancestors did." The old woman smiled. It was a kind smile without hatred or bitterness. "It was a long time ago," she said. "We have both moved on. Your people are good neighbors now, good friends." She patted his hand gently. "But we always remember, and every species in the galaxy remembers too." She stood up slowly, her old bones creaking. "That is the lesson, young one. That is what the ruins of Prime teach every civilization that looks upon them." She looked at him with eyes that held the weight of centuries. "Never vote to invade Earth." The young returned home and wrote his history. It was read across the galaxy for generations. And in all that time, in all the centuries that followed, no one ever again made the mistake of the eternal conclave. The humans remained kind, they remained generous, they remained peaceful. But the ruins of Prime still stood, silent and beautiful in the light of the twin suns, a permanent reminder of what happens when kindness is mistaken for weakness. And the universe never forgot.